So welcome to all of you on this August gathering for listening to our Professor Pradeep Kumar from IIT Roorkee on Industry 4.0. This lecture is organized on behalf of this Professor B.D. Tilak Visiting Fellowship Endowment in our institute. It was instituted in 86 and 87, 1986-87 year. Professor, let me introduce a brief about B.D. Tilak, who was Padma Bhushan. Uh, he was awarded Padma Bhushan in 1972. Professor B.D. Tilak graduated in chemistry from SP College, Pune. Then he did his textile chemistry from our institute in 1939. And then afterwards, he completed his PhD in 1943. Then he has taken doctorate of philosophy in organic chemistry in 46, DSc in 1960. And he carried out his postdoctoral research work under Nobel laureates Sir Robert Robinson and Professor R.B. Woodwards in Harvard University. On returning from Oxford, Professor Tilak joined this institute in Department of Chemical Technology in Mumbai and established research in distup and heterocyclic chemistry and chemical technology. He was professor from 1950 to 1965 in our institute, and then he moved forward to become the director of National Chemical Laboratory, one of the prestigious CSIR lab in Pune. And he did his outstanding basic research in the chemistry of heterocyclic compounds and various fields. He published more than 200 papers, and he supervised 32 PhD students. Apart from his contributions in chemical science, he has contributed significantly in country's march towards self-reliance in chemical technology. He was a recipient of Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award. I already told you he was a recipient of Padma Bhushan in 1972. Then he was recipient of Vasudev Banerjee Gold Medal of Indian Chemical Society and KG Naik Gold Medal of the Maharaja Sayajirao University, Baroda. And these are the few. Besides this, he has a lot of accolades to his credit. With this brief introduction, I request Professor Pandit sir to introduce today's speaker, Professor Pradeep Kumar.
Thank you, Professor Sarode, and welcome Professor Pradeep Kumar for this B.D. Tilak Endowment Visiting Lecturership. One more thing which I would like to add as far as Professor B.D. Tilak is concerned, all his research, in addition to the fundamental science-based and technology-based research, at the back of his mind, he always had the welfare of the society as a criteria for his research. So you will find that most of his research has a certain social relevance. And subsequent to that, he also was involved in many NGOs which were working in the field of science and technology, bringing in the scientific temper into general masses. So this was one of the major contribution, and he's been considered as a scientist who worked for social cause using the science and technology. So this was one of the legacies of Professor B.D. Tilak. And I'm very, very happy that Professor Pradeep Kumar has agreed to give this particular talk. It is absolutely fits into the general philosophy of things. And Professor Pradeep Kumar is no stranger to our institute. He has been visiting our institute multiple times, either for NBA or through NAC. But as an academic, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce Professor Pradeep Kumar for Professor Pradeep Kumar, sorry for that, Professor Pradeep Kumar to the audience. We have more than 150 participants listening to this talk. So Professor Pradeep Kumar, currently Indian Institute of Technology, Roorkee, is an outstanding academic, more than 300 publications, more than 650 presentations, national, international, well-traveled, and in terms of also and administrative experience. He has been a Vice Chancellor of DTU. In addition to that, he has been a regular member contributing to the academic excellence in engineering education and engineering teaching. As far as his specific expertise is concerned, I think he has looked into each and every aspect of mechanical engineering, as well as the application of mechanical engineering for production as well as supply chain and issues related to good manufacturing practices, so on and so forth. In addition to that, he has received number of honors. He has been recognized as an outstanding teacher award by IIT Roorkee multiple times. He has also received best paper awards multiple times, and he's been recognized as an eminent chemical engineer for his contribution in the field of mechanical engineering by Institution of Engineers in 2014. He has been responsible for organizing many conferences and has been an advisor and a mentor to many of the young faculties with 30 years of experience in teaching teaching mechanical engineering and many of the engineering topics as such, which are of general nature and of general utility. Professor Pradeep Kumar is an outstanding scientist and an educationist who has agreed to give this Professor V.D. Tilak endowment lecture today. So I welcome you, Professor Pradeep Kumar, and I will hand over the mic back to Professor Sarode to initiate the proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Pandit. Now I request our honorable guest, Professor Pradeep Kumar, to deliver his endowment lecture.
My sincere request to all is those who are not speaking, please mute their mics so that there are no interferences. I'm going to start with my...
Yeah, thank you, Professor Anirudh. First thing is the congratulations for the post of the Vice Chancellor. And I have forgot to congratulate earlier. And I really thank to all of you to give me this opportunity to deliver a talk on Industry 4.0. I hope you will like the lecture. So one of the requests, can while delivering the lecture, can I off the video, because the bandwidth problem may not come.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Are you planning to share a presentation, Professor Pradeep Kumar?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. Then in that case, you can share the presentation and switch off the video.
Yes, thank you, sir. So because once I start sharing, so in that case, the bandwidth may create some problem sometime basically. Just let me know that if everything is coming right or not.
Yeah, we can see your presentation. If you can just make it full screen, it will be fine.
Just I'm doing it. I will do it again.
You can go to the slideshow and just start. That's it.
Yes.
That's very nice. We can see it fully. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. So thanks to the Professor Anirudh and his team and to giving me this opportunity to deliver talk on Industry 4.0. So before I actually come to Industry 4.0, I would like to share a short case study. And that case study is basically related with the Kodak, the rise and fall of Kodak. Everybody knows that Kodak business is in the film photography. They were in the photography business, and those who are old like my age, so they know that when the movies there and they normally write Eastman color. So earlier when the casting basically they started the movie, so the script comes Eastman color. So at that time I was not thinking what Eastman color is, but now I understand what is Eastman color. So that is the part of this short case study, that is the Kodak if you go back in the 19th century, the Eastman Dry Plate Company, they produced the first camera that were not invented for the professionals. So their focus was for the common man. So they invented the first camera, right? And the innovation, I'm now focusing on the innovation, technology as an innovation trigger. Dry plate or gelatin process was invented way back in 1871 by Maddox. And then Bennett basically improved this process just after 7 years. And George Eastman, he developed and patented a machine to coat the plates in 1879. So in 7, 8, 9 years, the dry plate process was invented, improved, and the manufacturing started. So it took 9 years to come to the market. And if you see the small diagram here, so this is the camera and this was the plate. Basically, it was a coated plate and the exposure was there on this glass plate that is coated by the some chemical process. Then when this Eastman patented this machine, so then that innovation basically led to the entrepreneurship. So in 1880, Eastman started commercial manufacturing of the dry plate. After 1 year, he started commercialization of it. And there was a businessman, Henry Strong. He was impressed with the success, and both of these two, the Henry Strong and Eastman, they came together and they formed a company. On January 1, 1881, Eastman and Strong Partnership, the name of the company was Eastman Dry Plate Company. So they basically started this company. First disruption, because anytime any disruption in the technology happens, a lot of changes happen. I will show you in the subsequent slide. So disruptions basically happens because of innovation, either because of technology innovation or because of the change in the customer behavior, change in the customer's requirement, or many other allied changes are also possible. So disruptions happens. So first disruption happened from dry plate to the roll films. So after 3 years by forming the company, Eastman patented the first film in the roll form, and it started manufacturing paper film named as the Kodak. So they given the name of this film as the Kodak, and the cameras were so successful that the Kodak word was incorporated into the company name. And that Eastman Dry Plate Company became Eastman Kodak Company in 1892. Okay. And by targeting non-photographers, Kodak created a huge market. So like the Kodak brought photography to the people, just like Ford brought cars to the people. So for the masses, they started developing the cameras and improving the cameras, reels, and photography. So once they stabilized, then the maturity phase comes. And in the maturity, the growth was there. So people love to take photos. And as they become richer, they took more photos. And thus Kodak made more money and kept growing and growing. That was the growth phase of the Kodak company. Second disruption, again, the second disruption happened from non-color to the color film in 1935. So the Kodachrome film was introduced and became the first amateur color film success. So the second change in the technology happened, and that changed the entire world from black and white to basically we moved to the color. And at that time, only 4 color combinations were there. The base of the film was 4 different colors only. Now you have thousands or millions of the combination of the colors we have. But at that time, it was just a combination of 4 colors. And that second disruption happened in the history of the Kodak. Just like Gillette made great money by selling razor blades, Kodak made great money by selling film. The main source of profit was not the camera. It was the continuous consumption of the film. So this is how Kodak started making money, because camera is a one-time purchase, and the more you click the pictures, the more money you are consuming in it. So that was the success of the Kodak company. Very general photograph. Life is really a game. Money is how we keep score. We keep score whether we use it or not, but we keep counting the score. But in the background, Kodak kept neglecting digital technology. So they were the carrier of the innovation. All innovation in the photography happened in the Kodak, but they were so amused by the success of their film and the market of the film or the demand of the film, they forgot that anything new can come. At parallel in Japan, Fuji, they started digital company and started coming into the market, but they kept neglecting because they were earning a lot of money. So Kodak's management's inability to see digital photography as a disruptive technology, even as its researcher extended the boundary of the technology. Although the researchers of the Kodak company, they had first digital technology, but they basically didn't have the vision that this new technology or disruption in the technology will spoil them. So Kodak continued producing film roll cameras. Just a ugly story. If you see this picture, that in 1997-98, the Kodak company fired 20,000 people. See here, 20,000 people just in 1 year. And their employees, basically, if you see, the firing process was continued 97-98 onward. And accordingly, certainly the share prices also went down. Kodak also responded. So, but they were late in entering into the digital technology. They basically entered into the China because most of the markets were captured by the Fuji, Japan. So they entered late, but they could not survive because of the disruption in the technology and because of addressing the issue at the right time. So they did not address the issue, although they invented first, but they neglected it. Within just a few years, their business model disappeared and they went bankrupt. In 2012, Kodak filed bankruptcy and declared it will quit photography business. That is the fall of the Kodak company. Some after effects, as I already mentioned, that although they developed the digital technology, after effect was the company blew its chances to lead the digital photography as they were in the denial for too long, not responding to the market, not responding to the technology, not responding to the globalization, what is happening in the competition. Steve Sasson, he was a Kodak engineer. He actually invented the first digital camera back in 1975. So this Steve Sasson has given the details later, but it was filmless photography. So management reaction was, that is cute, but don't tell anyone. The leader of Kodak failed to see digital photography as a disruptive technology. So they didn't see any future in this technology. They say, okay, it looks good, but don't tell anybody. The management was so focused on the film success that they missed the digital revolution after starting. They started first, but they missed it because they thought it is just funny. There are so many other companies are there. Not, it's just, I have given the story of only one, that is Kodak, HMT, Bajaj, Dynora, Murphy, Nokia, Rajdoot, Ambassador, and so many more companies in America like JC Penney and other stuff are there. So they did not basically respond to the disruption in the technology. There was no shortage in the quality of all the above company, yet they are out of the market. Why they are out of the market? What is the reason? The reason is they did not change over time. That is the main reason was there. Some more facts, just with respect to the Indian conditions. 5 or 10 years ago, there was no such place where there is no PCO. When the mobile phone came in everyone's pocket, the PCO business gone. All those PCO people started what? Selling the recharge of the phone. You go to that shop, get it, recharge it. But now even recharge has started online. Digital technology is there. Everything is now done with Paytm, PayPal. So many application has come. People have started railway tickets from their phones and many all these things. This is the present day. You know everything. Mode of money transaction has also been changed. Currency note to the plastic to the digital. Just one more picture. So you can see that 5 MB hard disk drive 1956. You can see the size and the weight. And nowadays 1 terabyte micro SD card. That is the size, the micro size basically. And so many other foreign companies. I have big list. His name is Blockbuster, Yahoo, Segway, IBM. So they went off just because they did not respond to the future, did not respond to the innovation, did not care about the competitor. If you cannot do better than competitor, you will go out of the market. Once Henry Ford said this, if you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got. Yes, to some extent, he was right. But nowadays, it is not like that because Kodak was doing what they keep on doing. So they should get what they always got. No, because you have to look around the system, around you, that what is going beyond your place, or beyond your unit, what your competitor is doing, whether the customer choices are varying, customer tastes has become different. So it was okay at that time, but this is a conditional statement, and it may be valid at that time, but not valid now. So what lessons we can learn? External environment can be deceiving. Changes happen. Every time in our life, in our system, in our business, in our research, the way of doing research, change happens. And sometimes your greatest strength can be your weaknesses. What happened to Kodak will happen in a lot of industry in the next 10 years. And most people do not see it coming. That's why we should understand that what is going on in the world, things will now happen with artificial intelligence. Your health sector, electric cars, education, 3D printing, agriculture and jobs, everywhere there is application of the artificial intelligence. So not only artificial intelligence, but digital technology, various application has come. You just by sitting at your house, suppose you want, I will show you one example later also, which I am giving now. If you want to select a shoe of XYZ company, you have application. They have given various alternative, what size, what color, what shape, what design. So out of every alternative, out of more than million alternatives together, you can select one. So things are not like earlier. It was just one design is there and everything is being produced in a mass. So artificial intelligence and internet and also your IoT, this cloud computing, and so many things are coming, and they will change our life. That's what we say, welcome to the 4th industrial revolution. People say industry 4.0, or our mathematicians say welcome to the exponential age. Things are changing very fast. Earlier, the life of any product or life of any process was 20 years, 30 years. Now it's just 2 years, 3 years. In some cases, even 1 year. The software had already, I should not say software will disrupt, I say software had already disrupted most traditional industries. and it will further disrupt in the next 5 to 10 years. Uber, we all know Uber. It is just a software tool. They do not own any cars and are now the biggest taxi company in the world. Airbnb is now the biggest hotel company in the world, although they do not own any properties. Autonomous car, very fancy. In 2018, the first self-driving cars appeared in America and California. And it is predicted that in the around 2022 to 2025, the complete industry will start to be disrupted. You do not want to own a car anymore. You just have the phone and call the car. Car will just show up to your location and will drive to your destination. So that is one technology that is about to come. But along with that, it has the snowballing effect on other organizations also. Like if suppose autonomous cars are in the market, so it will have the snowballing effect on the insurance companies. They will have massive trouble because without accident, the insurance will become 100% cheaper. So they have to change their insurance business model. If they keep on doing the same insurance business model, so their model will disappear. Nobody will go for that. And they will, one day they will just for the car insurance, they will stop doing it. Health. There will be companies that will build a medical device already available, called the tricorder, that is from the Star Trek. And this tricorder works with your phone. There is one gadget that is known as the tricorder. It works with your phone, which takes your retina scan, your blood sample, you breathe into it. It then analyzes 54 biomarkers, your hemoglobin and all those stuff in your blood. It checks, and then it also has the capability to advise you. And in the future also, when artificial intelligence and all this neural network, all these things will come, maybe it will give you the proper exact diagnosis of the problem that you have. So 54 biomarkers that will identify nearly any disease. It will be cheap. So in a few years, everyone on this planet will have access to world-class medicine. So it will give you advice. If suppose no disease is there, if some deficiency is there, there will be some system that, okay, this is the recommendation for you because you have some deficiency in this, something like that. 3D printing. The price, everybody knows the price of the cheapest 3D printer came down from 18,000 to 400 in last 10 years. And in the same time, it has become 100 times faster. All major shoe companies started 3D printing shoes. Spare airplane parts are already 3D printed in remote airports. You need not to carry now that some spare parts, all the airports should have spare parts. You have 3D printing, you have the CAD design, CAD modeling, all these things, software with you, design with you, just plug in, it will be printed over there, use it and enjoy it. Even the space station now has a printer that eliminates the need for the large number of spare parts they used to have in the past. Just a slide. None of the company was there before 2006. So how fast these companies are coming? iPhone, iPad, Kindle, 4G, all these things, Snapchat, WhatsApp. And just a comparison, time to reach 100 million customers with the history. It took 75 years telephone to come to your home for 100 million customers. Web 7 years, Facebook 4 years, Instagram 2 years, Pokemon Go in just 1 month. Means how fast the things are coming, and if we need to tight our belt to respond to the changes that are happening around the world. And everything is getting smart. Everything is getting smart. Earlier, we were having the technology push that somewhere some research is going on and some new technology is there, and someday some innovation will come and that is a push type of system. Some manufacturer will produce something, will innovate something, will send to the market, and customer will start liking it. But nowadays, only technological push is not enough. The market pull is also side by side. Even if you are doing some innovation, customer is not liking it. So both these things may be used as a driver to move faster. So market pull is also there, technology push is also there. Earlier it was one way only. Now it is both way. And as a result, what is happening? Smartphones are coming, smart homes are there, smart cars are there, smart factories, everything is getting smart every day. Every day. Nowadays, even they have started putting the chip into every product. A small chip in the product that basically tells its IP address, when it was produced, who purchased it, how frequently is using it, means all it is connected with the internet, and all the data is being generated, how frequently the problem is coming, how frequently the repair is there, all this data. And so you can understand billion of products are being sold, and billions of the data multiplied by different characteristics are getting stored. That's why there is a need of big data analysis. So that is a traditional factory, and this traditional factory basically is a fixed location, and it is basically, you can say, industry 3. I'm not talking about before that. So that is a fixed location. Everything is hierarchical. That somewhere some factory is there, maybe in Bombay, maybe in Delhi, maybe at Roorkee. One factory is there. Everything is getting produced right there, and it is being transported from there. So that was a hierarchical system was there, and the system was well connected by the wire, like this PLC and all these things. That is a traditional factory. But there are challenges now in the traditional factory. What are the challenges? Shorter product life cycle. Use and throw culture is coming. Just people, you buy one car and keep on using for 40 years. No, that is not there. So that is the challenge, shorter product life cycle, not only with respect to the usage, but also with respect to the innovation and the design also. Another challenge is the customization, individualized products. Everything, I want my car should be unique. Customization is there. International competition, globalization is there. Open trade are there, open markets are there. Quality is always there. Quality demand is there and will always be there. So these are the challenges. To respond to these challenges, some solutions need to be there. And some of the solution is that fixed location will not work. Because if some factory is at Bombay, I need some product in Roorkee. Maybe that factory is giving me the product, but the travel cost of that product, that shipment will take 3 days or 4 days. I don't want to wait. I have given the order, I want next day. So what the companies are doing, they are basically developing a small units near major cities, so that anywhere the demand is there, the product is produced there using all these 3D printer, etc. And or they have the component, they assemble it and they ship to you within 24 hours. So instead of fixed location, the changing locations are there. You do not have the just assembly line type of thing. You have the modular, that one component is there, another component is, suppose one component is being manufactured in Bombay, one in Delhi. So both are sending both the product component to each places. So when two components are there, they have the very easy way to basically assemble it. So there is no hierarchical system. It is distributed system. Location sensing. Earlier it was not there, where the inventory is there, where from my product, I know only the company is in Bombay, but where from the product is coming, I don't know. So location sensing with respect to the inventory, with respect to the finished product is coming. Instead of wired, we are having the wireless, and this will happen just because of the information and communication technology. So this is the backbone of all this future technology that is coming and that will come. As already I mentioned, that future per product have a unique identity and memory by birth. So some RFID means every product has some IP address. So you can locate where your product is there, who is using, how frequently they are using, all data automatically is coming there. So that is the future of the product. And if it is coupled by the artificial intelligence and the computational, you can say analysis capability, so you can do wonders. And as always, the challenges for the modern manufacturing industries are increasing competitiveness, increasing in efficiency, because energy and resource efficiency are really decisive factor of competitiveness, because you need to take care of the sustainability aspects. So energy and resource efficiencies are the key factor for the competitiveness. Shorten time to market. Because customer wants immediate. So this will happen only because if you have the shortened innovation cycle, more complex product, larger data volumes, enhanced flexibility. Flexibility maybe in many cases, like mass production is there, individualized customization, and as well as the mass production. Maybe your logistics also, the flexibility should be there, that up to some place by air, up to some place by car or something like that. And manufacturing is changing faster than ever before. Nowadays, the life of the product has reduced to 1 year, 2 years, 3 years only. This is the evolution of the Industry 4. And if I just quickly, if I go for the first industrial revolution, it happened way back in the 18th century, that is 1784, through the use of steam power and mechanization of the production. Earlier, all this production was man-made just because of the muscle power they use. So steam power was not new at that time, but they applied the steam power, or they had the application of the steam power in the spinning wheels. So what was before? Produced threads on simple spinning wheels. So earlier it was manual operation. Then basically they went for the mechanized version, and the energy they were using the steam power. And through this mechanized version, the output was 8 times in comparison to what they used to do earlier. As I already mentioned, it was already known the use for its industrial purpose was the greatest breakthrough. Instead of waving looms powered by muscle, steam engines could be used for the power. Like that. Then later the locomotive also came, because first the steam power in the powered loom they used it. Then locomotives came, and because of that, the movement becomes easier and the shipment becomes easier. All those steps basically happened during the Industry 1.0. The second is Industrial Revolution. Basically, it was beginning in the beginning of the 19th century, because of the discovery of electricity and assembly line production. And the credit goes to the Henry Ford, because he noticed it, although it was earlier applied. So took the idea of mass production from where? A slaughterhouse in Chicago. So that slaughterhouse, basically, the pigs were hung from conveyor belts, and each butcher performed only a part of the task. So by that time, the scientific management also was coming, like the F.W. Taylor is giving the specialization of labor. So instead of doing instead of producing every component of the product by one man or by one family, the productivity was less. So the specialization of labor and the scientific management came into existence, and they said that everybody must be specialized in one operation. So if I am specialized in one operation, So I can do the things faster than anybody else. So the two things basically together, the idea of conveyor belt along with the specialization of labor. So the mass production concept basically was introduced by Henry Ford in the Ford Motor Company. And so what they do, they were having the car at one place, and every component was brought to the car and they were fixed it. Now what they are doing, they are basically using the assembly line, and certainly the productivity improved and other things are there. The third industrial revolution, basically the computer age, or computer age you can say, robots also. It begins in the 70s in the 20th century through partial automation using memory, programmable computer and computers. So because of this technology, we are now able to automate the entire production process without human assistance. So a lot of things that we are using it is industry 3.0, like robots are there, so that perform program sequence without human intervention. So these things are existing everywhere. Now coming to the fourth industrial revolution, production system that already have come, because whatever the system we have, they have the computer technology. All softwares are there, they are plugged in. Some you can say robots are also there, robotic arms are also there. Are expanded now. How they are expanded? By a network connection and have a digital twin on the internet. So like this, suppose, just although it may not be visible, there is a motor here, physical motor. This is the digital twin of the motor is there. So you can play with this thing, you can change the design, you can innovate the design faster than actually. So everything is now have a digital twin on the internet. These allow communication with other facilities. So although the motor is in America, I am sitting here, I have that digital twin here. So I can play with it, I can understand with it easily. So that basically we can further improve it. We can think of innovation, we can think of change in the design, etc. This is the next step in the production automation. The networking of all these systems lead to cyber physical production system. Therefore, smart factories, in which production system, components, people, they will communicate via network, and production is nearly autonomous. I am sitting in my office, I have a computer with me. So I am passing the instruction, my instruction will be sensed by the machine, and whatever the instruction the machine will start doing the operation, and automatically will just complete the operation and will shut. So all this thing basically is nearly autonomous through the network, And if you notice this figure, see the degree of complexity is increasing in every age. So like that. So if you compare first and second less than third, then there is more complexity is there, because every technology has some positive, some negative points that we'll talk about. Then if you come to the history of the Industry 4, that basically happened in the Germany in 2010. That is German BMBF, that basically the German name. In English, basically it is the Federal Ministry of Education and Research. They initiated the Science Union to identify future high-tech, like DST, ours DST, to identify future high-tech trend with the high impact on the society. First appearance of the word Industry 4 came in 2011. Final report of the Science Union. So they have submitted the report because that was the task given to them. What is the future? So they're giving the final report in 2012. And securing the future of German manufacturing industry, they basically recommended for the implementation of the strategic initiative Industry 4.0. So in their report, not only they given the vision, but also given some implementation strategy. And in 2013 itself, the task was given to the 3 industries to check for the implementation aspect of the Industry 4. And in 2014, they delivered it. They delivered the application on a and they say, yes, this is the future and this is a strategic vision. And the two basically ministries, that basically the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, Federal Ministry of Economics, they basically poured a lot of money, that is around 400 million euro for this project, and they succeeded in this project. Then next question comes, what leads to Industry 4? And I told you, anytime a disruption happens, changes happen. If we are not responding, we will be failed. So what were the 4 disruptions that happened that led to the Industry 4? One was the astonishing rise in data volumes. Not only data volume, computational power has improved, connectivity has improved, new low power wide area networks are available. Emergence of analytic and business intelligence capabilities has there. So now there is no need to worry that if billions and trillions of data is coming, with the proper cementing and proper headings, we can provide the accurate analysis of all the factors. New forms of human-machine interaction such as touch interfaces, augmented reality system, virtual reality, etc. is coming. And the 4th disruption was improvement in the transferring of the digital instructions to the physical world. Like the example, advanced robots, 3D printing. So these are the 4 major disruptions that led to the Industry 4.0. Naturally, question comes, why Industry 4? And the answer of every why is that if we know the benefit, only then we can justify. What are the so many benefits are there? I'm just highlighted few. It helps manufacturer with current challenges by becoming more flexible and reacting to the changes. So whatever the reactions are coming in the design, in the process, wherever, we are responding to that. So if you are more flexible, responding properly to the changes, actually these are the benefits. You will have more market, more share of the market. It can increase the speed of innovation, because when actual data is with you, you can analyze the data, you can change the design process. Very consumer-centered, leading to faster design processes. Workers can become coordinators at the center of production, because the negative part that I will tell you later, the negative part is basically readiness. We are not ready to adopt this technology because we have the fear of unemployment. Yes, it will be there, that blue collar job will be more affected, but by providing the proper skill, they will become the coordinator instead of just doing the work manually or just by machine. So they are basically looking around what basically actually is happening. They are basically will act like a coordinator of the production system. It is a sustainable long term, assisting in finding solution for any challenge that arises. These are some technologies of the Industry 4, that Internet of Things, big data, augmented reality, horizontal vertical integration, simulation, cloud, additive manufacturing, cyber security. Although cyber security and big data is a bigger challenges than any of the challenges here. Advanced robotics, Internet of Things. Just already I mentioned the technologies. Just quickly I'm showing you some more. Mobile devices are there basically. Internet of Things, location detection technology. Just fine, I'm doing the finer version. Although these are the 9 technology in the bigger one. Advanced human machine interface, authentication and fraud detection, 3D printing, smart sensors, big data analytic and advanced algorithms, multi-level customer interaction, augmented reality, cloud computing, data visualization, real-time training, etc. Now, some of the challenges and issues that are being posed, any new thing basically poses some challenges and issues are also there. One of the biggest challenges is the cyber security. Another big challenge is the manufacturing specific big data and analytics. Very easy, you can collect data, but many times when you collect the data is so clumsy and complex, you do not know what to do with the data. So you have to develop the algorithms, you have to collect the data through the softwares in a proper manner, so that you, depending upon the type of analysis you required, you can find out which data basically is related to the warranty, which data is related to the design, which data is related to the quality. So many things are there. So that is basically the another challenge. If I just click on this, it is a challenge to ensure high quality and integrity of the data. So not only the quality of data, but integrity of the data that has been recorded from the manufacturing system. The annotations of the data are very diverse. I told you quality, reliability, so many things, usage, warranty, and it is increasing challenge to incorporate diverse data repositories with different semantics for advanced. Anytime you need data, you should know where the data is there, which data I have to select. So that is a big challenge. I can say this is issue also and challenge also. Investment issues. Yes, a lot of investment is required. Is rather general issue for most of the technology. So that basically requires huge amount of investment in the industry. Reduction of the development and innovation period. As I'm focusing that flexibility has increased. So when you implement Industry 4, you have all the data, all the analysis, everything with you. So your innovation period basically reduces. So the innovation capability is turning into essential success factor. So if you do not go for the innovation, you are failed. So high innovation capability is there, but to keep the high innovation capability, you have to have the other issues, other challenges taken care of. Customization, already I mentioned that instead of mass production, now we are becoming batch size one. We are only producing one component for Pradeep Kumar, one component for XYZ, and one component. So it is not a mass production for everything, same thing for everybody, no. So that is another challenge is there, because you have to adjust your design, you have to adjust your process according to the requirement of the customer. Flexibility is another issue. Decentralization is also challenge. That already I said, faster decision making procedure will be necessary. So when we say faster decision is necessary, this means organizational hierarchies need to be reduced. So not only vertical, we have to go the horizontal, like business process reengineering. If suppose I purchase a product, I call a company, I say, sir, my product is not working fine. So you say, no, I am the receptionist, I do not know, to please call tomorrow or please call on the other number. So that is basically bug passing is there. But in this system, that if somebody is picking the phone, they will know some basic details of the product as well as you, and they will locate where is there, but the problem is there. So they will address the issue right over there. That is what business process reengineering is there. So that basically, if you inbuilt this BPR into the Industry 4, so you can address this issue or these challenges with that. Sustainability, yes, our resources are depleting, and missing talent and capabilities. Certainly that is a challenge. Already I mentioned that is a big challenge out there. So these are the Industry 4. And some of the challenges I did not talk about much in detail, because they are the implementation, they will come in the implementation. Challenges in the implement, that was the general challenges. Now I'm just mentioning the challenges that are there in the implementation of Industry 4.0. Economic challenges. Lot of money it needs, high economic cost, business model adaptation. So anything new, you do it. You think that I have money, I will invest, but there is a risk also involved. High risk is there. Unclear economic benefit or excessive investment. So these are the economic challenges. The another is the societal challenges are also there. Privacy concern, your data security. Whatever you are doing on some platform. Chances of fraud is there. Chances of hacking is there. Your product design, somebody may hack it, may use it. Your competitor can use it. General reluctance to change by the stakeholders. It's a human being. So we do not want to change. So it is inertia. Threat of redundancy of the corporate IT department. So that corporate they have the existing IT department, they feel threat because when everything is online, means our jobs are gone. Loss of many jobs to automatic processes and IT controlled processes, especially for the blue collar workers. Political issues are always there because anytime new technology is coming, the political system must have a will to have the new regulation, new standards, new certification, legal issues, etc. All those things, because whatever you have the regulation rules, regulation standard, they were for the previous system. And certainly, like you must be noticing that every time we are having this new rule has passed for just for fraud detection, and so many internet and networking issues are coming. So that basically is another issue, how fast we can respond to it. We have the money, we can implement it, we can invest it. We know it will be profitable, fine. We can take care of the social responsibility. But if something happens, who will take care? So along with that, we need to take care that our system, our rule making system must be faster than us, so that we are protected with respect to our money, with respect to our technology and innovations. And fourth one is the internal, that is organizational issues. IT security issues, already I mentioned. Reliability and stability, that is another internal issue. Need to maintain the integrity, that already we talked in earlier. Need to avoid any IT snags, that is in cyber security we talked about. Need to product industrial know-how, yes. Lack of adequate skill sets to expedite the transition towards the fourth industry. This is a major challenge. Now, how to respond to it? That we do not have the, you can say, skilled manpower available. So here comes the education institutions. So the education institutions have to respond to the requirement of the industries. They need to develop their curriculum around this, that if tomorrow my engineer is going from IIT Roorkee, so they are not going to work in the traditional factories. They are going to work in the advanced factories. They need to have some skill set available with them. If they don't have, either they will not survive or they will have to learn there only, wasting some time. So it is the basically responsibility now comes to the academic institution, that you have to upgrade, modify your curriculum to respond to the needs of the market. Because if you are not, then implementation will become almost negligible or none. And sometimes this top management commitment is also missing, because if motivation is not there, commitment is not there, you can never achieve the excellence. I always say energy equation, I put in the excellence. E is equal to MC square. E is excellence, M is motivation, C is commitment. So if you are committed but not motivated, excellence is zero. If you are motivated, not committed, excellence is zero. So you need both motivation and commitment. But the effect of commitment on excellence is more. So these are the challenges in the implementation of Industry 4.0. Then this is just quickly I'm skipping. These are the basically steps to adopt Industry 4.0. Means always start, I'm not going in detail, always start with the pilot project. You should have a vision, you should have the skills, proper skills, you should have the proper resources, you should have the motivation also, capabilities also. But because it is if you just go, you have a vision and you start implementing in the entire industry, it possibilities are there, or you can say more possibilities are there, you will fail. So always run pilot projects and then basically do the other steps like define it, what is the key process indicators. If you get success in that, then basically go for the complete life cycle solutions. That is general thing. Now, a lot of developments are happening in the world. Looking into this German Industry 4.0, so there is a coalition, that is Smart Manufacturing Leadership Coalition in the West, that is known as Industry 4.0. So they are working on the technology, they are providing us the solution, they are providing us the strategies, all those things, challenges, issues, and procedures, they are working on that. China basically is also working with the name Made in China 2025. Manufacturing innovation basically in the East, and what is the common denominator in all this development? That is the smart manufacturing. Like just one of the examples, digital to physical transfer. That is LM Motors. LM Motors, this is LM Motor Cars. They build cars almost entirely through 3D printing with a design crowdsourced from an online community. So they have the online community. They say, if I have to design bonnet. So they basically give that, okay, say for example, I'm taking different, suppose I put on the WhatsApp and social media. I know these are the engineers in my groups. So, okay, I have to design the bonnet. So let's do together. So there are online communities available for doing all these things, and you get it faster, better, and other things. So the design, they are crowdsourced, not outsourced. Crowdsourced, outsourced is normally one company. Crowdsourced is to many people or many companies. It can build a new model from scratch in a year, far less than the industry average of 6 years. Just in 1 year, new cars are coming. You might be noticing. And those around my age or my seniors, if we remember, we used to book, there are only 2 cars in India, Fiat and Ambassador. So you can book the car, but delivery time was almost 15 to 20 years. So forget about the change in the model. The same model, even the production was so slow that we were not able to get the cars. On the other hand, this is LM Motor. On the other hand, Vauxhall and General Motors, they are still bending a lot of men. They're still using that conventional process. But now they have moved, but also use 3D printing and rapid prototyping to minimize their time. Means some of the components they started doing with this new technology, and they are having a mixed model type of the situation. Highly customized product is coming. These are the examples of Industry 4 I'm giving you. Customer can create her own perfume from millions of possibility via web portal. Application is there. Smart factory can produce 36,000 unique perfume package per day. I'm a customer, I'm just giving the order. I want this fragrance, this bottle, this thing. There are so many alternatives are given to me. I selected from various alternatives. I want this smell, etc. Then when I will finalize the things, it will tell me what will be the cost. Then another is when you want it, I want delivery within 24 hours. I can't wait for my perfume. So what they are doing, as already I mentioned, so they have a distributed manufacturing system. And because they will pass the order, okay, that somebody in Pune, they want it. So suppose I am sitting in Roorkee, I will pass the instruction, pass the detail to the small smart unit in Bombay. Say, okay, this order has come, shipment detail is there, ship it like that. 24 hours after the order via the internet has been completed, the individualized product is ready for shipment. Okay. Since the customer designed by herself, she does not accept long delivery time. The product must be produced close to the customer. And how it is possible? Because of the smart factories. Adidas, already I given the example. The customer can design their own shoes by using an application. And also customer doesn't want that you should have long logistic chains. So long logistic chains no longer required. Same thing that already applicable to perfume, the same is for the shoes also. Thus, Adidas decided to open various speed factories for personalized shoes in Germany, close to the customer, using cyber physical production system. So I'm sending the design, I'm sending the manufacturing instruction, they have the material, they have the machines, fine, they do it, and they dispatch it. Just one photograph of that speed factory by the Adidas. So various alternatives are there so that you can select it and basically order it. Then another platform that is smart platform that is coming, you know it, although already we are using it, pay by use. So this basically is major turnaround in the system. That subscription-based services are coming. You do not need to have a capital expenditure from CapEx to OpEx. You just worried about operating expenditure. You need not to go for the capital expenditure. Suppose I want a compressor. So company will send the compressor. They are not charging the money for the compressor. They will charge the money that how much compressed air you are using it. Like this already exists, that photocopy machine, basically they send it, they say, okay, you need not to pay any maintenance cost or any capital cost. Only number of copy that you are basically photocopying it. So pay for that. So that model is one of the smart model is there, that is CapEx to OpEx. And Rolls-Royce pioneered this approach in its jet engine business. Other manufacturers have followed the suit. Atlas Copco, a manufacturer of air compressor based in Sweden, is moving away from selling its equipment directly. So they are not selling it. They say instead you bill only the compressed air that is used. The machine installed at the customer site can monitor the flow of compressed air and adjust the output according to the customer need, who will pay as they use. So the billing will be on the usage, and it is more convenient, more beneficial to both the parties. It's a win-win situation. In software also, SAP nowadays, you need not to buy any SAP software. You say, okay, I want these features, these modules in my software. So they say, okay, we will develop it and put on cloud. You can use your data is secured. You can use directly and pay as the annual subscription. And many of you must be knowing Qualcomm makes more than half of its profit from intellectual property royalties. So they always are in the new technology, although they are not basically producing the product or the items or the component. They are basically only doing the research in the technology, and they get it patented, and technology transfer is there. So they are earning a lot of money from that. Now we need to prepare for the future. So when we know all these technology, benefit, loss, issues, challenges, when we know all these things, we need to prepare for the future. To get most out of the Industry 4, we need to prepare for a digital transformation. That is vision, strategies. Manufacturers should begin today to join the hunt for the best digital talent and think about how to structure their digital organization. Data management and cybersecurity will be the critical problems to solve. So these are the two major issues that are, although issues can be anywhere, but these are the two major issues that need to solve. So we need to prepare ourselves. We need to have the digital talent available, because as far as the investment in the technology is concerned, we can do it. but we should have a right talent to work on that. Security issues are there, rules, regulation must be there. So we need to prepare for the digital transformation. This was a survey that basically not in India, in Germany. So that is the present now, and this is in 5 years. That these are the various industry. Basically, they will move to the digitization and integration. That electronics industries presently 45%, they will basically 77% of the industry basically will be doing all this digital manufacturing or all the industry 4 issues. One of the Indian example, Bajaj, they use these cobots, and it is the key tenet of Bajaj success, standardization. So they are really good. If you want to understand what standardization means, that is there. We teach in our curriculum also, and all this ISO 9000 and all those stuff basically is focusing on the processes and the standardization. Market demand for multiple model of a wide range of vehicle. So there is a market demand of the vehicles are there, but the process is labor intensive. Another problem was in Bajaj space constraint. Physical taxing assembly. Physical taxing means more muscles power, constrained space is there, lot of labor basically in the assembly lines are there. So Bajaj Auto was looking for a standardized automation solution that could be horizontally deployed and that could provide the productivity, flexibility, and reliability. They procured 30 cobots to study their productivity and output impact. Further installed 150 cobots from Universal Robotics, Denmark. And what you will ask, what is cobot? Cobot is a collaborative robots. They are robots intended for direct human-robot interaction within a shared space. If you see that photograph, that human are working on the assembly line, but some robots are there, they are basically installed on the ceiling because that was the constrained space was basically also an issue. So they have the cobot, and some of the tasks are being done by the workers, some of the task is being done by the cobots, like material handling, deburring, vision application, bolt tightening and welding. So all these cobots are working in cooperation with the employees. These are the tasks basically being done by the cobots, but certainly in cooperation with the employees. What were the result? First large factory application of cobots in India. This led to the enhancement in productivity, efficiency from 507 vehicles per person per year to 804 units per person per year. Reduced ergonomic risk, because when you are manually handling the things, there's possibility of all the muscles strain, etc. is there. So using the cobot, the ergonomical risk basically reduced. Improved is, as a result, improved ease of operations for women staff, as physically strenuous tasks could easily be performed by the cobots. Means heavy tasks basically was given to the cobots. Then coming implication, that is India point of view. Our Subhash Chandra Pandey, then additional secretary and financial advisor in the Department of Industry Policy and Promotion. So he attended one United Nations seminar, and whatever is coming, that is his viewpoint, and I agree with that. So he given his viewpoint with respect to the India. So what they say, in earlier era, labor intensive and polluting industry involving bulk manufacturing and repetitive assembly jobs, they were shifted to the developing country. So labor intensive work or polluting industries, they shifted to our developing countries, as they offered advantage in cheap labor and emerging markets. But with this modification, if you are talking about new age or industry 4 or whatever, so this trend may see a reversal. All the industry that has been shifted to developing country, it will go back, like robotics, additive manufacturing, fast changing energy market dynamics may result in manufacturing job shifting back to the developed world. That is another basically implication that is possible. I say that it is possible, but if you tight your belt, if you respond well, if you deliver it, you can do wonder here. Another point he mentioned, developing countries must have access to technological know-how. They say, okay, fine, but you should provide us the means to achieve our objective. So they say that not only you should provide the technological know-how as well as the investment to upgrade the skills of workforce and their manufacturing system. So developing countries need technology as well as the money investment also, so that we can respond to the change in the system. From the mass production of single design product, see that was the earlier say, only one design mass production, we will move to customized production without enhanced investment in the production system. So customization of the product, a one batch size of one, that is the future. The risk that we take in mass unemployment for some categories of worker, this combined with lack of skill. So there is a risk. Mass unemployment is possible, I told you, in blue collar, and combined with lack of skills. Even our engineers will not have the skill. Unemployment is one thing at lower level, but our officers, they don't have the skills. They could lead to imbalance with political social implications. So this was his speech he has given, and very, very relevant to the India point of view. Then comes what will come next. Everything, what next you can offer. So certainly, if somebody asks what next you can offer, I say we'll offer Industry 5.0. And what is this? This is interaction and collaboration between man and machine. So collaboration was there, but interaction with the between man and machine, that is basically the future. And how it will is possible? Through the artificial intelligence, right? The next wave of industrial revolution needs to define how we collaborate and how we define the rules between human and machine. Means even the robots are there, they have the capabilities to think, capability to design, capability to take decisions. This is very, very impressive example, basically was given by the Google CEO, Sundar Pichai, and where a voice assistant, not the human being, where a voice assistant called to make an appointment, and the woman answering the call did not have a chance to recognize that she was speaking to a robot. Means the robots can take the decision. They can have the various alternatives. They speak very well. They speak very well. He has demonstrated it. That is the future.
Sir, your voice has stopped coming.
Yeah. So I was showing the video. Did you?
No, we could not hear the video, but we will take the link from you later on.
Okay, okay, okay. So actually, I tell you the story. Just a minute. So are the slides visible now?
No, sir, you have to share the screen once again.
Once again. Actually, something happened here. So that's what. So it's almost, I'm done. Share.
Yes, it is visible now.
It's visible now, right?
Yes, sir.
So actually, that was just a 1 minute video. It was basically interaction between a machine, Google Assistant, with the salon. So the assistant was basically taking the appointment for the customer, for his client, and the discussion was going on there. That okay, it was not the just one time. Means the assistant was taking decision that what are the various alternatives, what client really wants it. So all these things are there. That is basically future. That you need not to bother about a decision, because slowly and slowly when the things will come up, these robots or these assistant will have a more database that these type of customer have these choices, these type of customers have this time available, so like that. So based upon that they will select the best alternative, even human being cannot. So that was my lecture. Now just it is a general slide, the last slide, that is, do we have the recipe for change? This is the last slide. My question is, do we have the recipe of change? To change itself, you need 4 things. You should have vision, you should have skills, you should have incentives, resources, you should have a proper action plan. Then changes are there. Any of the thing is missing, you can't have change possible. Suppose vision is not there. So when vision is not there, you have skills, right skills, motivated, resources, action is there, the result will be the confusion. If suppose you do not have the skills, you have money there, motivated there, vision is there, action plan is there. So you will be, an anxiety is there, whether I will be, whether I am going in the right direction, not, whether it is implementable or not. Now, you have already I mentioned, if you are not motivated, my boss has the vision, I have the skills, my boss is providing me the resources, I know the action plan, but I am not motivated. I say, what is the benefit to me? It's resistance to change. And everything is there when resources are not there. You say, I want to do it, I know everything. You feel frustrated. And when everything is there, you do not have any action plan, then it is a false start, just fake, right? So that is all for today's lecture. Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry that in between you the slides were not coming. Actually, that was a 1 minute video was there.
Thank you, Professor Pradeep Kumar. Now the floor is open for some questions. Any questions from the participants?
Sir, before we keep the floor open for the participants, there are 2 questions which has already come up at the time of registrations. A student from MGM College of Engineering, Mr. Adarsh, has asked, when speaking for Industry 4.0 on a particular sector like chemical industry, where presence of 4.0 is least applied, and how could we possibly use this digitization drive to uplift the industry?
Oh, that is visionary question. So it is very specific to the chemical industry. See, whether it is a chemical industry, food industry, or any industry, there are hundreds of applications are there, hundreds of area you can apply Industry 4 directly. You need to look at what area basically. Okay, certainly like 3D printing is not there in chemical manufacturing, but I'm not saying in future it will become or not, but 3D printing aspects are not there. But maybe in the allied business, subsidiary requirement of the chemical industries, as Professor Anirudh already mentioned, we do a lot of things together, mechanical and chemical things. So wherever the mechanical application in heat transfer and fluid mechanics is there, so that are equally applicable there.
Okay. The second question raised by a student from VJTI College, Mr. Omkar. He wants to know how we can see the industrial development going hand in hand with the environmental measures. As it is seen that environmental exploitation by India, although India has surpassed the green measure index in numbers and countries.
Yes, that is the basically major challenges, and our government is working very strict, very high on this aspect, and sustainability is a common issue. So this industrialization will come, and if we will not respond to the requirement of the customer, somebody else will do. Somebody else will do, and sustainability is the bigger than this issue. So this is more of the social concern he is asking. So I agree with that.
Now we request the participants to unmute their mic and they can ask their questions directly.
Actually, I am using first time Zoom. So that's the reason.
But it went excellent. No problem. It was very nice. You know.
So actually, at Roorkee, we are using WebEx and Microsoft Team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think it was a wonderful talk, very general, like you said, but very, very illustrative and, you know, kind of, the impact was very good. Thank you very much for that very lucid presentation.
Thank you, ma'am.
See, most of the participants were till the end of the lecture. You know, that shows that they liked your presentation and the sequence and the flow in the lecture and the graphical representation and illustrations by giving some practical examples.
Thank you, sir.
Pratibha?
Yes, sir. I was about to convey something. Actually, I like the session very much. Lots of the slides and all was very informative. It was really nice. Thank you, Pradeep Kumar sir, for the information. It was really helpful.
Yeah, that's why I said I prepared, because I was knowing that chemical group is there. So I thought for industry first, so that people, it's more of a just a dissemination of information in a proper way, basically.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to ask some questions? Okay. In case if you would like to have some more details, you can always contact Professor Pradeep Kumar. He is from IIT Roorkee.
Yeah, they can contact
can you
me
have his
anytime.
email ID, please?
Sanjay is
On
okay.
the chat.
Okay. Sir, can you type your email ID in the chat box?
Yes, why not?
Zope sir, thank you for attending with short notice.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. How are you, sir?
Fine.
I would like to connect him later on.
Yes, he has given. You can note down this his mail ID. He has typed in the chat box.
Yeah.
If there are no questions, let me take this opportunity to give a vote of thanks. I thank Professor Pradeep Kumar for sparing his valuable time and accepting our invitation to give this BD Tilak endowment lecture. And really this lecture has helped to understand what is the next phase of our industrial revolution. And not only that, you have gone beyond that. What is Industry 5.0 also will be. No, that is really will help the participants to know much more in what direction not only they should mold themselves, but also their students, and how to help the institute to develop the vision, how to develop the skills among all the stakeholders and so on, to make this new application of 4.0 successful. Okay. I also thank Professor A.B. Pandit for sparing his valuable time for giving the introduction, and also thank Professor Padma Devarajan, our Dean Innovations, and other deans as well as HODs, all faculty members and participants from industries, and some research students, and some other institutions, faculty as well as students. I must thank all of you for taking out your valuable time to hear this lecture by Professor Pradeep Kumar. I hope this was very knowledgeable and will help you in the long run, not only to you, but also help your group and in teaching and developing the things in and around you, so as to have better equipped for facing the industry 4.0. With this, I thank all the participants, and I declare this session is over.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
You, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.